There we go. Welcome. We're going to talk about LaG Omer today. So as I was saying, there isn't one clear story of LaG Omer. They're kind of a bunch of things that were thrown together at various times, and we'll look at a few of those. Yeah, but it really got me wondering kind of how did they all get connected and what's like the historical development. But we'll have to do some more research. But for now, we're going to look at some of the like seminal texts of LaG Omer and study some of them. And there's a good story in there too. So there we go. Oh, and I see Brenda wrote in the chat, I also have memory of being in Israel and LaG Omer, huge bonfires everywhere. Yes. I also remember I was leading, and then we'll get into this and I'll stop just talking. I was leading a birthright trip. My first job, I worked with university students, and I was leading a birthright trip, and we were there for LaG Omer, which I thought was really fun. But one of the things in Israel they do is they like move LaG Omer. So the chief rabbis, or the Orthodox rabbis in Israel, were concerned that potentially, because LaG Omer that year was going to start on a Saturday night, and they wanted to make sure that people didn't violate Shabbat, because if they started their fires too early or they started gathering the wood that day, they were going to, desecrate Shabbat, because you're not supposed to light fire on Shabbat or gather sticks or stuff like that. So what the rabbis did was they moved it, they delayed it one day, and so they made it like, okay, we're going to actually celebrate it instead of Saturday night, Sunday night to Monday. But it was this whole thing because in Israel, the schools were out, they get vacation day, and so no one was sure like what the vacation day was, but so that was interesting that they just wanted to make sure that people didn't light their fires during Shabbat. Okay, we have some more fun LaG Omer memories. John says, potatoes are thrown in the fire at night and they're ready later that night or even in the morning. Yum. Also making peat over the bonfires and a lot. Yeah, so there's lots of fun, right? There's lighting a bonfire, there's having picnics, and we can talk a little bit about maybe where those customs came from. But again, it's not 100% clear. It's like a lot of things, I feel like, in Judaism where we have many different explanations, and there's not like only one. There's like a bunch, like, stepping on the glass at a wedding. I was meeting with a wedding couple, and so I'm thinking about weddings, but like stepping on the glass, and why do we do that? And there's a lot of different explanations. So same with this is why do we do bonfires? There's a lot of different ones, but we'll come back to that. So this is what songs are usually sung around the fire. It depends on the songs that you'd like, right? But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen so you can dive into it. And the first text is just going back to the Torah. This is actually in last week's Parsha, which was Omer, and it was part of what I spoke about. So I'm just like plugging myself, but you don't need to go listen to it. But I did talk about it. So if you're really into it, you want to hear a different interpretation, you can go to our YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. Boom. Okay, here we are. Well, I don't mind that. So this is a different, no, this is the same, sorry. Okay, so this is Leviticus. This is just where we get the idea of counting the Omer. And this is not the only place, but this is one. So, right, so it just says, I'll read in the Hebrew and then you can look in English. I'm gonna make it a little bigger, actually, sorry, everyone. There you go, hopefully maybe I can make it even bigger. Maybe I'll just make it huge. Whoa, so big, okay. It says, Usfartem lachem mimochorat hashabat miyom haviachem et Omer hatnufa sheva shabbatot tmimot tiyena ad mimochorat hashabat hashviit tisperu chamishim yom vehikravtem mincha chadasha l'Adonai. So, and from the day in which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you shall bring an offering of new grain to the Lord, to Adonai. So we have this idea of counting, and this is connected to Pesach, to Shavuot. So we're counting, right? We're in the Omer right now. So again, nothing about LaG Omer. We don't have like, and you should party on the 33rd day. That's nowhere in the Torah. Okay, so where does it come from? Well, there are a few hints that we get. And here is one of them. So this is from the Talmud. So I don't have the Hebrew, but it was just, it's Aramaic and stuff. So this is from the Talmud section called Yevamot 62b. And I want to say that, so this is one of the explanations about why we, they link this up to LaG Omer, and it's going to talk about a plague. And I want to say, I really wanted to, when I was thinking about teaching this, I really don't want to link this plague with what's happening today. I think it can be easy to kind of like, oh, there are a lot of people who are sick, and we'll go into it, to, oh, like there are a lot of people sick now. But to me, I want to make very clear that I do not believe that what's happening with COVID is some type of divine punishment. That's not my theology, right? I think that things happen, and for me, where I see God in all of this today is when people are helping, and the people who are, trying to keep each other safe, and the people who are wearing masks to try and, prevent the spread, and how we're all, using science and washing our hands, and the doctors are able to use science, and the people who are working to develop medicine and all of that. Like, that's where I see God, but I don't see COVID as a plague, like this divine punishment. Okay, so I wanted to just that's my preface for this text. Okay, so that being said, would someone like to read Yevamot 62b in the English? Yes, John.
It was said that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of disciples from Gabat to Antipharis, and they all died at the same time because they did not treat each other with respect. The world remained desolate until Rabbi Akiva came to our masters in the south and taught the Torah to them. And it was they who revived the Torah at that time. These were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Judah, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Shammua. And it was they who revived the Torah at that time. Atana taught. All of them died between Passover and Shavuot. Rabbi Hama bar Abba, or it might be said, Rabbi Chaya bar Abin said, all of them died a cruel death. What was it? Rabbi Naaman replied, croup.
Okay, thank you, John. So just to kind of go back, right? So we have this story of Rabbi Akiva, and so Rabbi Akiva is this great scholar. He's also a great example of kind of like adult education at its finest. Right? Rabbi Akiva, as the story goes, he started learning when he was 40, and he, became this great sage. So it's never too late. Don't get discouraged. But anyway, so Rabbi Akiva, this great scholar, he had 12,000 pairs of disciples, right? So many people who wanted to learn from him, his students. And right, so, and the story goes that they all died at the same time because they did not treat each other with respect. And right, and then eventually Rabbi Akiva was able to kind of help this sickness and this death stop, right, because he taught Torah to these masters in the south, and these lists of rabbis, right, Rabbi Meir, Judah, Yossi, Shimon, Eliezer ben Shammua, and then, right, so there's that story about all of this like tragedy, right, this great tragedy, and then Atana, which is trying to see, I want to give like the 1-minute explanation instead of the 10-minute explanation, but Atana is someone who has like memorized lots of parts of the text, because this was an oral tradition. So they had all this memorized, and so they'd come and say, oh, here's some of the text that I have memorized that I can tell you. And so it's from like an older time. And so this Tana says, all of them died between Passover and Shavuot, right? So this sentence, right, links this occurrence to the Omer. Right, so great. So that's part of it. And then we're going to see a little bit later that someone later links that this sickness ended on LaG Omer, right? So there was this plague, there was this sickness that was getting all of these people, all of Rabbi Akiva's disciples sick. And then eventually it stopped, and it stopped on LaG Omer. And so that's one of the reasons to celebrate. Right? So we don't even have that yet really in the Talmud. We have like a hint of it, but it's not really outright there. Okay, I see got some things in the chat. So I just want to, sorry, there are lots of things on my screen. Why pairs were, yeah, so there's a question of why pairs were those study partners. And yes, where it says, right, 12,000 pairs of disciples. Yeah, so it's the idea that Torah was studied in pairs, and right, a lot of times in the Talmud, rabbis are kind of in pairs, right? You get one opinion, then you get the opposing opinion. So yeah, so good question. And then, is that linked to why there are no weddings during this time? So yeah, so there are a bunch of different practices in the Omer that have to do with kind of it being a time of mourning, which is the idea of the Omer being a time of mourning is, again, not found in the Torah, right? We saw in the Torah it just says count things. But yeah, because of this and some other things, the Omer has this kind of tinge of mourning, and so there's certain mourning practices. And one of those things is, yeah, we don't have weddings during the Omer. And so there are a lot of people who, but LaG Omer is an exception. So there are a lot of people who will get married on LaG Omer. There are also some opinions that kind of after LaG Omer, you're in the clear, so you just have to wait till LaG Omer. And then after that, a lot of the restrictions let up.
What's the significance of the disease croup or chrup? Is it TB?
I think it's just they wanted something that was painful and not great, and so that was one of the things.
I think I used to hear it when I was younger. My parents used to refer to a cold or tuberculosis as a croup. Do you know anything about that? Or?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on croup. I almost want to go in. This might take a moment. I kind of want to go in and see what the Hebrew says. Let's see if we can find it. You guys can, these are my secrets. I'm showing you all my secrets. Okay, let's see. Does anyone else, while I'm going on this little mini scavenger hunt, does anyone else have any thoughts about this text or comments? You can just go, because I can't really see everyone's picture right now. Okay, if I can't find it soon, we'll just, okay, here we go. Okay, right, so here we go. Here we have the story. You can see I was not lying. It's CFM 62b. Oh, and so here it's translated as diphtheria.
Okay.
Right, so the Hebrew is askara. I'm not sure that helps us so much. I don't really want to go down the rabbit hole with this, although we totally could. But if anyone wants to, here, I'll try and put it in the chat. Let's see if this can work. If someone else wants to go down a rabbit hole. Here you go. Did that work? No, it didn't work. Here you go. Control. Okay. I'll try one more time, and then no, we will abandon. Come on, computer. There we go. Okay, there you go. So that's the Hebrew word that is translated in one translation that I have as croup and another as diphtheria. I also don't really know much about those diseases, but I think it's, there you go. So it's something. It's something not pleasant, but yes. So there you go. And I think it's also notable that the reason that they said this plague came on was, here you go. It's here. Oh, somewhere. Right, was that they weren't treating, I'm just gonna go back to my original source sheet, sorry. Was that they weren't treating each other with respect, right? That, right, because they did not treat each other with respect. And again, I don't think that this is a literal thing of like, oh, the rabbis are saying that when we're not nice to each other, a plague's going to come. But I think it's, again, a story of saying like how important it is for us to treat each other with respect, and that it's really, really important. And so again, here, they're kind of underlining that, so that we have to be respectful of the people that we're learning with, and I mean of other people as well. But there you go. Cool. Any other thoughts about this one before we keep going? Great. Okay, so we'll see this. This will kind of come back a little bit later. So another piece, so there's like all of these different things that the Omer and LaG Omer gets linked to. So one, we have the sickness, right, the death of Rabbi Akiva's students, which is part of why like there are certain mourning practices that are observed during the Omer. Another one that you might have heard of is haircuts. And so there are a lot of people who won't cut their hair during the Omer, or you know, shaving. So sometimes men won't shave on the Omer, and so like an Omer beards, although there are exceptions, or people who will do it for Shabbat or whatever. This is not a halacha shiur today, but we could go into it, but those are some of the other customs. But yeah, so this is part of what's linking the Omer to these mourning customs, is this terrible occurrence, this terrible death with Rabbi Akiva's students. And right, it's interesting. I was kind of reflecting on this today, that right, that like this is still in our memory of something that they wanted to preserve, that we still remember. So there you go. Noreen says some groups don't cut their lawns. There you go. I don't like mowing the lawn, so like I'm for that all the time. Like, please give me an excuse not to cut my lawn. I mean, I don't have a lawn in Toronto, but I don't like using the lawnmower. Anyway, thank you. Okay, so next we're gonna kind of switch gears a little bit, and another person who is linked to LaG Omer is this rabbi in the Talmud, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who, so we're gonna kind of see one of his like foundational stories in the Talmud, and it's a long one, so we're going to go through it. We're going to read it more like a story than a text. Like I feel like sometimes, right, we like to like take apart text, which I love to do as well, but here I want to read it more for plot, if that makes sense. And if there are things interesting things that stick out along the way, of course we can talk about them, but that's what we're going to do. Anyway, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, this rabbi, and he is connected in like this Jewish mystical Kabbalistic sense with the Zohar, which is one of the main texts of Kabbalah. But again, that connection is kind of doubtful if it's like historically true, but at least like mythologically it's true, if that makes sense. It's part of the mythology of all of this. And anyway, it said that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's birthday is on LaG Omer, but also like the day of his death. But he also brought light to the world. So that's one of the explanations of the bonfire, is we're kind of remembering Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai for bringing this light into the world by the way of the Zohar, which is this text, which feels a little bit contrived to me, but that's one of the explanations. So there you go. So anyway, so this is a story about him, and it's in the Talmud. It's in Shabbat. It's long, so it's across 2 pages, so 33b to 34a. And I will say, before we launch into it, I didn't put all of the backstory in because it was just getting so long. But basically, Rabbi Shimon and a bunch of rabbis are sitting around talking about the Roman government and the things that they've done. And one of the rabbis says, "Oh, they're doing a good job. Like, we're so grateful that they're kind of paving roads and building bathhouses." And another rabbi is like more skeptical, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says they're terrible. This is bad news. I don't like the Romans at all. And someone kind of overhears and rats him out to the government, and he gets in trouble. So that's where we are picking up in our story. I'll put it back. I'll put it up more. Okay, would someone like to start reading? Maybe we'll divide this up because it's a long one. Yes, Noreen? Great.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, Rabbi Elazar, went and hid in the study hall. Every day, Rabbi Shimon's wife would bring them bread and a jug of water, and they would eat. When the decree intensified, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "Women are easily impressionable, and therefore there is room for concern lest the authorities torture her and she reveal our whereabouts." They went and they hid in a cave.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause you for 1 second. Right, so first they're hiding in a study hall in the Beit Midrash, and every day his wife would go and bring him food and water, which is really nice. And then, he gets worried that, okay, like, since his wife knows where he is, maybe, they might convince her to tell, the Romans might convince her to tell him where her husband is. And so he's like, oh, we have to really go hide. And so she doesn't know where we are. So they're gonna hide in a cave. Okay, great.
A miracle occurred, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as a spring of water. They would remove their clothes and sit covered in sand up to their necks. They would study Torah all day in that manner. At the time of prayer, they would dress, cover themselves, and pray, and they would again remove their clothes afterwards so that they would not become tattered. They sat in the cave for 12 years.
Okay, thank you. So I'll pause again, right? So this like really interesting scene where they're in the cave and they are, sitting up to their necks covered in sand. Maybe this is part of the disguise, or maybe this is just so they can be modest without having their clothes on, right? Because they don't want their clothes to wear out, which I think is a really interesting little detail. But I don't know, maybe it's like now how, I don't know, I like to put on sweatpants. So instead of putting on sweatpants, they put on sand. I don't know, right? So maybe that's a stretch. But anyway, so they're sitting, but I love this image, all jokes aside, this image of, right, this father and this son kind of covered in sand. And so it's just their heads like popping out of the ground, and they're studying Torah. And it's almost like, right, these like wandering heads going around, right, that they're totally concerned with the intellectual piece, and they're not really thinking about the physical, right? Their needs have been taken care of. There's the water and there's food, but it's not like they're like cooking elaborate meals, right? They're just sitting all day kind of in this headspace, in this intellectual space, and detached from like the rest of the human experience, both their bodies, but also what's going on outside in the world. Okay, so they've been in there for 12 years. Sorry, I have to get back to where we were. They were there for 12 years hiding. And then what happens, Noreen?
Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance to the cave and said, "Who will inform Bar Yochai that the emperor died and his decree has been abrogated?"
Awesome, thank you. So it's this interesting thing that, right, Elijah the prophet makes an appearance here. Basically, instead, he says, "Who will inform Bar Yochai that the emperor died and his decree has been abrogated?" Saying, right, instead of saying, "Hi, I'm here. I know you're in here. You can leave because the emperor has died and so you're no longer in danger." He kind of asked this question out loud. So maybe Bar Yochai, right, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai won't know that he was found or that anyone knew his whereabouts or something. It's interesting. Oh, sorry. It's interesting to think about why. But anyway, so 12 years, he's ready to come out because he's no longer in danger. Okay. Does someone else want to take over reading, or Noreen, do you want to keep going? Okay, you can keep going. You're doing a great job.
Okay. They emerged from the cave and saw people who were plowing and sowing. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, "These people abandon eternal life of Torah study and engage in temporal life for their own sustenance." The Gemara relates that every place that Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Elazar, directed their eyes was immediately burned.
Okay, pause, sorry. So, right, this is such a great part. Okay, they come out of the cave. They've been in a cave for 12 years, right? They're floating heads. I mean, they're not literally floating heads, but that's basically what they've been. And they look out and they see people farming, and they are shocked, right? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is shocked that how can these people take time to farm? They should be thinking about Torah study and do like they had been doing for so long. And he gets so mad that these people are thinking about you know, physical sustenance and things, that they literally, I like to think of it as like laser eyes, right? Like this was where we invent laser eyes, but right. So like everywhere they look, was immediately burned. And there are different versions of the story that kind of have like parts of how much were burned, but right, they have fire coming out of their eyes and just like burning stuff because they're so mad, and they kind of have these mystical powers because they've been in that cave for so long. Right, so okay, so wow, wild scene. Right, and then what happens, Noreen?
A divine voice emerged and said to them, "Did you emerge from the cave in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave." They again went and sat there for 12 months.
Okay, so pause again, sorry. Right, so we kind of get that this was not an acceptable thing for them to do, right? The text is very clear. That, so this divine voice comes out, and the Hebrew for that is bat kol, which kind of means like daughter of a voice in a way, but right, bat kol, this divine voice. And so it's not literally the voice of God, but it is kind of the voice, this voice coming from God in a way. So anyway, so it's divine voice comes and says, you know, what are you doing? Like, why are you destroying my world? And so they have to go back into the cave. It was like, you know, time out, like go think about what you've done for 12 months. And so they went again and sat there for 12 months. Okay, keep going.
They said, "The judgment of the wicked in Gehenna lasts for 12 months. Surely their sin was atoned in that time." A divine voice emerged and said to them, "Emerge from your cave." They emerged. Everywhere that Rabbi Elazar would strike, Rabbi Shimon would heal. Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Elazar, "My son, you and I suffice for the entire world, as the two of us are engaged in the proper study of Torah."
Okay, right, so we have this moment, so they come back out, and a little side note, because we love a good side note in the Talmud. And so they're saying, okay, they were in the cave for 12 months, and then there's kind of this other like opinion. It's like, well, right, the judgment of the wicked in Gehenna lasts for 12 months. So this idea that someone who is wicked, who right after death is going to be in this Gehenna, which is like maybe kind of like a purgatory type deal. Lots of things to say about that. We could have a whole series on, right, Jewish views of death. But anyway, there's this idea that one of the many possibilities of things that could happen to us after we die in Judaism is that there is this kind of purgatory idea, and this idea that the most wicked stay in there for 12 months. That's like the max sentence. And that's actually the custom why people would say Kaddish, and a lot of times we say Kaddish for like 11 months. It's because we want to say it for as long as we can, but we don't want to say it for 12 months because we don't want to make it seem like we think our parents are like in this purgatory place for 12 months. Right? So we want to say it, but not so long that it looks like we think that they're down, you know, they're like in trouble. That's one explanation. That's not the only one as well. But anyway, okay, so there we go. And so after their 12 months kind of thinking about what they've done, they come out, and right, Rabbi Elazar is still like in this way of he's kind of destroying things, but Rabbi Shimon is able to heal. So even though Rabbi Elazar is still causing some damage, Rabbi Shimon is turned a corner, and he says to his son, right, you and I suffice for the entire world. So it's like, don't worry, our Torah study is good enough for everyone. We don't have to worry too much, right? So that's not very modest, but
no, aren't they kind of full of themselves at this point?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, right here, right, they're definitely full of themselves to say, oh, you shouldn't be engaged in farming and things, right, these things that we need, right, that there's, you know, saying even kemach ein Torah, if there's no flour, right, if there's no sustenance, we can't have Torah. So right, so they're saying everyone should just be studying Torah, which doesn't really have a lot of self-awareness attached to it, because actually we can't all study Torah. Different people are in different situations for, you know, that they need to provide for their livelihood. And then also that he then decides that, oh, it's okay, we've learned enough that, you know, we cover the entire world. We're so amazing. But we're going to see a little turning point again. So Noreen, if you want to continue, and we're almost done with the story, and then I know we have a lot to unpack here, so keep that all in mind, everyone. Okay, great.
Okay, keep going.
Yes, please.
Okay. As the sun was setting on Shabbat Eve, they saw an elderly man who was holding 2 bundles of myrtle branches and running at twilight. They said to him, "Why do you have these?" He said to them, "In honor of Shabbat." They said to him, "And let one suffice." He answered them, "One is corresponding to remember the Shabbat day to keep it holy. And one is corresponding to observe the Shabbat day and to keep it holy." Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "See how beloved the mitzvot are to Israel." Their minds were put at ease, and they were no longer as upset that people were not engaged in Torah study.
Oh, there you go. The end. I don't know why there's not a period there. I'm going to put one there for next time. The end. Okay. So, right. So we have this nice little closing vignette, right, where it's Shabbat, it's about to be Shabbat, and they saw this elderly man who's running. He's holding 2 bundles of myrtle branches, which I think are supposed to be like decorative. They say, "Okay, like, why do you have 2? You could just have 1, right?" He said, well, they asked him, right, "Why do you have these?" He said, "Oh, it's for Shabbat. I want to honor Shabbat with these myrtle branches, or I think those are the ones that smell nice, so it'll like make the house smell good, get us in that Shabbat mood," right? And we talked about last week about how to honor Shabbat. Here's another way from the Talmud: get some myrtle branches. And they say, "Okay, if it's to honor Shabbat, great, but why do you have 2? You only have 1. 1 is more than enough." And he said, "Well, I have them for because there are 2 versions in the 10 Commandments of the honoring Shabbat and keeping Shabbat, right? In the 10 Commandments, the one about Shabbat, number 4, in Exodus it says, right, observe, or shamor. In Deuteronomy it says zachor. Or maybe I messed that up. I messed it up. Exodus, it says zachor. Deuteronomy, it says shamor, right? So remember and observe. And so it says to correspond to those 2, which now we talk about how maybe sometimes we light 2 candles. That's an explanation we get for that. Or some people like to explain the challah in that way, and some people explain it with manna, whatever. But, right, so he's saying, so this person, right, who they've seen engaged in farming and whatever, they see that not only is he honoring Shabbat, but he actually has this bit of Torah. And he's saying, "No, like, I know that 1 would be enough to honor Shabbat, but I'm actually going to bring 2 because I know that Shabbat is that important." And they kind of have this moment of like, oh, right, people do care, even though they're not in their cave for 12 years studying Torah all day and all night, like we were, that actually people do care about the Torah, and they have their own way of honoring Torah and Judaism and all of that. The end. So what do y'all think of that story? Or if there's a piece you want to comment on. There was a lot. Brenda, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Go for it.
It seems as though those that are more learned seem to think that, not that they're superior, but they seem to know more, or they think that nobody else knows as much as they do. So therefore they can be free to criticize, like when they came out of the cave the first time and they said, well, these people are plowing. Obviously they have no clue about anything to do with Torah. They're not observing the Torah. They're only concentrating on making a living for day-to-day living. They didn't think that, they kind of assumed that everybody would be the same as them.
Yeah, definitely, right. There's this lack of perspective of like, oh, people have different lives and different needs, and we're not all just able to study Torah every day or want to, or yeah. I mean, I feel like sometimes I think about this. When my classmates and I were in rabbinical school, is we would get in this little bubble because we would just be us, like learning Torah like all day, and very cut off from kind of the population that we'd eventually be serving, right? Because we were just like studying. And then I remember like at my first internship really learning a lot, because I was like, oh, I had these ideals in my head of like what it looks like to live Jewishly, but really when we encounter the world, and we're pulled in different directions. There are like actually lots of different ways to practice Judaism and to learn and all of that. And so I think about that kind of brings me back to those days. Okay, I see a few things in the chat, so I want to read those, and then we'll so Noreen says, kind of a bizarre way to teach about studying Torah and relating it to counting the Omer. Yeah, well, yes. So it doesn't really, right, there isn't like an obvious connection here, but it's kind of made later, right? When later on Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is connected to the Zohar, and that's kind of connected into LaG Omer, it fits, but here it's not really, like, they haven't said anything about the Omer in this story. Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be a happy medium, that you have to make a living and you can still do mitzvot and be learned and observe and remember the Shabbat. But you can't just put your head in the sand, in other words, and go in a cave and just think you're learning. You have to make a living for your family, but you're also making a living for other people to benefit from. If they were farmers or agricultural people, they have to make a living and they have to provide for people, but that didn't stop them from being observant and going to shul and doing the right things.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of places, there are a lot of stories in the Talmud where there's this tension of like learning versus kind of being in the world and like earning a livelihood. And there are, rabbis who had jobs, and so right, John said rabbis of old had day jobs. It wasn't just be a rabbi. It was like there are, some rabbis who talked about being like peddlers and whatever, and right there they had to really figure out how to divide their time, and there was this tension. And there are some rabbis who were born into wealthy families, and so they could just learn all day. But there are
children. Yes, there are children that go to Israel. I was at a wedding several years ago, and the family were supporting the couple in Israel so that he could study. They managed to have about 10 kids, but meanwhile he could study all day because he was being provided by money that came from a community in Toronto that the father-in-law, and that was like yichus, to be able to study all day and not have to worry about working.
Yeah, totally. So there's also, so Eric says, interesting that they were able to study with just their heads buried in the sand, but to pray require their entire body. Yes, that is really interesting. Do you have other thoughts about that? Like why, maybe?
I guess it's respect to praying. Studying is one thing, but prayer, you have to should be wearing a tallis or wearing a suit or something, so they had to get dressed.
Maybe it has something to do with the ritual garb, like a tallis.
Yeah.
And tefillin. But yeah, I feel like, but I don't know, because when they're studying Torah, it's still a sacred text. It's like they're still engaged in something sacred, just like prayer. I don't know. Does anyone else have thoughts about this? Eric's point.
Is it possible that it was just figurative? They're just burying themselves in the Torah, so they weren't concerned about anything from their neck down, which also reminds me, when you talk about this, of what we're doing today. We're burying ourselves in our room. All we see of each other is from our head up, and we're studying Torah. And we're segregating ourselves from the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. The comparison of the Zoom boxes where we really don't see very much of our bodies. But yeah, it definitely could be figurative, right? And this idea that they're kind of not paying attention to their bodies. Nice. Okay, we have some more. Okay, Noreen says, thank goodness. So Brenda, okay, sorry, I missed a comment. So the Galpers, I think that was Mindy, said, I'm glad that the rabbis became more humble and gained more perspective about other Jews. Yeah, right, it's a nice learning. And especially if you think about who was composing this text and who was writing this text, it's the rabbis that are engaged in the writing of the Talmud and passing it down. And so they thought, okay, we need to put this in. This is a good thing to remind us that, we need to not get all high and mighty and self-righteous because we're studying Torah all the time, that actually other people, are studying too and care about Judaism too, even if it doesn't look like studying Torah all day, all the time. Yes. Other thoughts, comments?
Can I just comment about Israel? My friend Ruth Shapiro is there, and she said that they're not allowed to do bonfires made in parks. They can be fined if they go in large groups to the park. They have to celebrate in their own house, which is, not the greatest thing this year, but they cannot congregate or do fires at all. They'll be fined if they do.
Yeah, so that's good to know that they are taking social distancing into account, right? It's important, even though it's a Jewish holiday, and we'll get back to our big bonfires at some point. But yeah, definitely. Okay, so I have another text. If no one else has anything on that one. But again, so why did I bring that up with LaG Omer? It's because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, as a persona, is linked to LaG Omer, because it's like in the more mystical explanations around LaG Omer. Cool. Okay, so there you go. And I'm definitely not a Kabbalist, so that's not I feel like Stephen, you probably know more about that stuff. But yeah, so there you go. So that's why we did this story. Is this character Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is linked into LaG Omer. Okay, cool. So next I'm going to start my screen sharing again. Okay, great. Now I can't see it. Okay, yeah, I just love this part about like Shabbat. Okay, anyway. So next we're going to have, so this is from the Shulchan Aruch, which is a Jewish law code. So it's, a Jewish law code. And so this takes, right, it's part of this genre of literature that takes what's in the Talmud and other things and tries to distill it down into, okay, what do you actually do, and tells us how to practice, because from the Talmud it can be hard to know, because we'll often get differing opinions and stuff like that. So it's Shulchan Aruch, Yosef Karo, one that's pretty important. Anyway, so here we go. So here we have some stuff, and we're going back to that first idea from that first, or I guess the second text, the text about Rabbi Akiva. So would someone else like to read? Yes. MVP. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Go for it.
The time period between Pesach and Shavuot is called the Omer. Minhag is not to marry a woman between Pesach and Shavuot until LaG Omer, 33rd day, because during that time the students of Rabbi Akiva died. But to get engaged, it's allowed. And if someone does marry, we don't punish him. And after LaG Omer, it is all permitted.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop you again, or not again, but stop you. Sorry, so we have, again, so we're getting this idea, there's a custom, so we see that this is pretty old. There's a custom not to get married between Passover and Shavuot until LaG Omer. And again, sorry, so this is the same because during that time, the students of Rabbi Akiva died. So we see that, okay, it's beyond just this story from the Talmud, is actually we've taken on practices because of that. And right, you're allowed to get engaged. And if someone does get married during the Omer, they don't get punished and the marriage is still, valid. It's just not going according to custom. And then they say, but after LaG Omer, it's permitted. Great, okay. You want to keep going?
Okay, the minhag is not to get a haircut until LaG Omer, because then the students stop dying. But one should not cut one's hair until the 34th day, unless the 33rd is Erev Shabbat. Then you may cut hair on the 33rd because of honoring the Shabbat.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause you. So we're getting like a little technical, but so they say again, the minhag, right? Minhag means custom. So this custom is not to get a haircut until LaG Omer, because that's when the students stop dying. So even though it didn't say that in the in the text we looked at earlier here, something, right, at some point, this custom develops that it was like there's something special about the 33rd day, and that's when they stopped, when this plague stopped. And then they talk about, okay, but you should wait till the 34th day, unless the 33rd is Erev Shabbat, because if it's Friday, then you can't cut your hair on Shabbat, so then you're stuck with, you know, your shaggy hair. Great. And so then where it says gloss, that is the Ramah, so that is the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Moshe Isserles, who's like he's like the Ashkenazi guy. So the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, is Sephardi, and so then usually in this gloss, it's called the Ramah. He will give us kind of what's the Ashkenazi take on this. Cool. Okay, so do you want to keep going, Judy?
In these states, we don't follow his position. Rather, we cut hair from the day of the 33rd and add some extra joy.
Oh, getting internet.
And we don't.
Okay, we got some internet issues. I'm just gonna take over for you, Judy. Sorry. Hope you're back. Right, so
33rd falls out on day before.
Oh, okay. I'm just gonna read it for you because it got a little cut off. But right, in these states we don't follow this position. So he's saying in Ashkenazi land and in Eastern Europe, right, they don't follow this position. Rather, they cut the hair from the day of the 33rd and add some extra joy. Again, he doesn't talk about like bonfires or picnics, just like extra joy. And we don't recite Tachanun, right? This prayer we don't recite on a lot of days, a lot of happy days. Side note, in rabbinical school, we'd always try and come up with excuses so that we didn't have to do Tachanun. So be like, oh, we wouldn't do it on like baseball opening season day. And I was like, I don't care about baseball, but like whatever. Okay, anyway, so it's a joyous day. You don't recite Tachanun. It says, but you don't cut your hair until the day of the 33rd, not the night before. However, if the 33rd falls out on a Sunday, we have a custom to cut hair on the Friday before out of respect for Shabbat. Someone celebrating Brit Milah may cut his hair during the Sfira, right, during the Omer, and honor the festivity. So, okay, not super important, but right, we can see that there are some exceptions here around these practices on the Omer. But here we have this text that's linking Lag BaOmer and these morning practices to this idea of Rabbi Akiva and his students. But I don't know, I feel like it's like doing detective work to try and figure out all of like the ways that things are linked. And I feel like there are a bunch of different stories and things going on that all converge on Lag BaOmer. So there's the stuff around the plague in Rabbi Akiva, and there's stuff around Shimon Bar Yochai. There are probably some other things. Right? There's just like a lot that's kind of all like smushed together on this day. And it just makes me really curious what came first. All right, because we have both of these stories, but like which one kind of was there originally and which one got added on. Yes, okay, I see some things in the chat. Brenda said, so glad they didn't cut their hair till after Lag BaOmer. Now we shouldn't feel bad about cutting our own hair. Yes, I'm actually going to be cutting some people's hair tonight. It's very exciting. Are there special foods eaten on or after Lag BaOmer? Not that I know. I mean, I think people have different customs. Like the things that I've heard, I'm going to just stop sharing, sorry, so I can see you all. It's so much more fun to see your faces. Okay. So what I've heard is that there are customs of like doing picnics, but I'm not sure that I've heard of kind of special foods. I don't know, has anyone else eaten a special Lag BaOmer food that maybe I don't know about?
I'm trying to remember when I did Lag BaOmer in Eilat when I was in Israel in 2005. There were certain fruits, but I can't remember. There were special fruits like from the boxer tree. What's the name of the fruit that comes from the boxer tree?
Carob.
The carob. Thank you.
So that would make sense, right? And that's the carob tree links back to the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? When he's in that cave, the miracle occurs and the carob tree grows and the stream, there's like a magical spring. So they have the food and the water that they need. So that definitely ties into this. So that would make sense. Yeah. Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, I remember that very, very well. And it was like this huge bonfire. We made pita, and then there was something else. We were doing pita, and then we had all of the typical things you would put into a pita, but it was very memorable.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you. Other foods or things, practices that you've done?
With the bonfire, do you have like a horror dancing on the fire and things like that?
Yeah, we did. Oh yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, right, so this idea of being joyous on Lag BaOmer is something, and so, yeah, there's definitely, you could do a hora. I don't think, none of this stuff is like strict, right, Jewish law. It's all custom, so that could definitely be a custom. I know a lot of times, people do concerts because there are some people who won't go to concerts during the Omer or listen to kind of instrumental music, which is part of why Rabbi Cantor Loomer is having his concert tomorrow, to kind of feed into that. Right, plug. Hope you'll join us tomorrow. But yeah, so there is this thing about music, and so that can feed into dancing too, because why not? Yeah.
I have a wedding tomorrow morning that's in Israel.
Wow.
So it's at 9:30 because it's like 7 o'clock there. I think it's 10 o'clock. So there a lot of people get married on Lag BaOmer. So I have a wedding I'm invited to in Israel.
Yeah, it's definitely a popular day to get married. I remember when Lag BaOmer is like on a weekend, especially if it's on a Sunday. It's like everyone I know ever got married on like a Lag BaOmer a few years ago when it was on a Sunday, and it's like, oh my gosh, there are too many weddings today.
Well, I don't know. Do I have to get dressed up?
Just wear a fun hat, right? No one can really tell.
You're right. It's an Orthodox wedding. I guess I should wear a hat.
Wear a fun hat. Do whatever you want. It's it's a Zoom. You're on Zoom, so who knows? I feel like
There you go. Perfect.
Perfect.
It's a sun hat.
And someone asked if we had to sign up for the concert tomorrow. No, you do not have to sign up. Just like all of these, there's a Zoom link. Just click it, and you'll be there. Any other thoughts, questions, things?
I have a wedding tomorrow too.
Wow, the same one.
In New York.
Oh, in New York.
Yeah, second virtual wedding in 2 weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, how come you had a wedding and it was during Pesach and Shavuot? I wanted to ask you about that, Stephen. How come they got married at that time?
I'm not sure. Well, maybe the rabbi can tell us. My sense is that you're allowed to get married, but you can't have a celebration like a party. It's just a low key. You can get married, the betrothal and all that, but you can't have all the celebrations and, like you say, the horrors and the drinking and all that. That it can be just a bare minimum ceremony. That's my understanding. They're both very Orthodox, so they must have gotten a blessing from the Orthodox rabbinate to do this. I don't know, Rabbi, is that true?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the piece about wedding is that rejoicing piece, and since Omer, at least the beginning of the Omer, is seen as this time of mourning, you wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, I think there are people, and many people of all spectrums, who will allow weddings during the Omer, and maybe for maybe there was a special reason that they needed to get married during that time, and so this stuff is just custom. So there are ways to kind of get around it if need be, and especially if you're going to have something toned down like that, because you're not, if you're not having a big party and really doing the celebration, it is different. Yeah, but that is interesting. I haven't really heard of many people doing that, but yeah, totally.
I got a question. I could ask this. My bar mitzvah, many, many, many years ago, I was born on April 20th. And so my bar mitzvah came between Pesach and the end of the month. I was allowed to have my bar mitzvah. But after the end of the month, you can't have your bar mitzvah until Shavuot or Lag BaOmer. I'm not sure. Does that have anything to do with the same thing we're talking about today?
Yeah, so there's there are definitely different interpretations around when kind of the mourning customs are the most high, and there's some people who say that before Rosh Chodesh, yeah, there is like more leniency, or on Rosh Chodesh, there's a leniency because it's Rosh Chodesh. And yeah, so there are lots of different opinions in that way. And I'm not an expert on, kind of how they all fall out. But yeah, that definitely is related to this. Yeah, totally.
So it's after Lag BaOmer that you could have a bar mitzvah then now. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, Lag BaOmer would be a good day, except
it's
today
Shavuot,
it's not a
it's Lag
Torah
BaOmer.
reading day,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
But sometimes I think it would be, yeah.
It could be, you never know. But
Yeah, exactly.
as long as it's after Lag BaOmer, it's okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is we all need to party tomorrow in our homes. Crank the music. If you want to dress up, you don't have to. Do something a little fun, a little joyous, something a little different. Yeah, it's a good excuse.
Can we go shopping?
Sure, just
Now we can
wear a
go.
mask.
We can do a little bit. Some of the stores are open.
Yeah, wear a mask, be careful.
We'll
If you
do
need to
that.
get some stuff, or just order it online. I ordered something really fun online. This is totally not related, but it's like this big coloring page, and it's definitely marketed to children. And so now all of my like internet advertisements think I have kids, even though I don't. But we got this huge coloring page that you put up on the wall, and you can like color it in slowly. So I'm really excited. So hopefully that'll come tomorrow, and then I can celebrate by coloring in a unicorn because we can have fun too. It's okay. It's not just kids who can have fun. Anyway, with that, just thank you all again for coming. I really enjoyed this discussion, and I hope you have a great Lag BaOmer. And again, tomorrow night there's a concert. We have our dance party for, I don't like the word youth. I feel like that's such a weird name, but kind of ages like 7-ish to 15-ish. But it's gonna be really fun with Mark, he's like he's a dance teacher, he's a coach, so it won't be me because I don't know how to dance, but someone who will actually really help you and have fun and all that. So that's coming up on Wednesday, and yeah, we'll learn something different next week. So get excited, it'll be a surprise. And yeah, thank you all again.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.
Always a pleasure. Everybody, good night. Everybody stay healthy.
Thank you. Happy Lag BaOmer.
Night all. Be well.
Rabbi?
Sameach.
Good night, Eric. Good night, Steve.
Good night.
Happy Lag BaOmer.
Thank you.
Hi, Jean.
So fun. Wait, did someone have a story? I mean, a question for?
How's your family in the U.S.?
Oh, they're good. We're staying inside.
Yeah. I've seen people come in and out of your house over the weeks, so I know you're with family or friends there. I must. Is that right? Are you home?
Oh
with
yeah. Here, I was like, what do you mean? I thought you were talking about my apartment in Toronto, and I was like, people are breaking in.
No. I know you're there. No.
Yeah. No, I'm with family, so it's been good.
Everybody's okay?
Yeah, we're all okay. We're all staying inside, staying away from people. But yeah, we're all doing okay. Thank you. Was
that your brother who was online last week?
My partner's brother.
Okay.
Yeah. So a full house.
Well, his name was also Walker, I think. His name Dan Walker.
Oh, that one. Oh, my brother. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting confused because I'm living with my partner's brother, but then my brother came on to services. Yeah, Danny, okay. Dan Walker. So.
All right. No, good.
Yeah, I was talking to my parents. I was talking to my mom, and my brother, and I was like, it doesn't matter where you are anymore. Just come to shul at my place. And they're like, oh yeah. So.
Good.
It's all universal.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of fun to have them.
It's been so amazing, Rabbi. I cannot tell you how amazing this whole experience has been. Everything.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
It is really. Thank you.
Night all.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Stay healthy.
Actually, I have to go cut someone's hair now because it's
Can I make an appointment?
Sure. Yes. Totally.
I have some here. There's some here to take off.
Perfect. I'm on it. Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.